Fighting game system mechanics are the heart and soul of a fighting game. It's what makes them stand out against other fighting games and usually provides the depth required to keep someone engaged for hundreds, thousands of hours, you know. And I've been playing a lot of fighting games across my years, and I'm kind of obsessed with talking about them. So I kind of just wanted to make a cool video series highlighting and breaking down some of my favorite fighting game mechanics that I've come across, right? And the goal of this series is mainly to highlight what I believe to be some of the best and innovative system mechanics that we might have seen, and just sort of take a little deep dive, sort of describe what exactly makes them well designed and why this translates to a game having, you know, an incredible amount of depth. And hopefully you might realize something you might have not known before, even if it's a mechanic you're very familiar with. It's important to mention that I'm going to be talking about the design of the mechanics themselves rather than considering the balance of the mechanics. I think it is hard for a competitive fighting game player to separate these two functions, and it does often lead to situations where people dislike what is otherwise a pretty well designed mechanic because of the balancing around it.
But during the video series, I want to give my analytical insight as to what makes a good fighting game mechanic, and hopefully make it entertaining to watch along the way. Without further ado, let's begin.
しゃあねえな。使いたくなかったんだが。第666高速機関解放、次元干渉虚数法人展開。レイブル起動。
So if you haven't guessed it, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite fighting game mechanics, coming from one of my favorite fighting games in Blazblue Central Fiction. And of course, I'm going to be talking about the beating heart of this game, which is the overdrive mechanic. All right, so what exactly is overdrive, you might ask? And as I said, it's kind of like the beating heart of this game. It's what all the other systems and all the other mechanics were designed around. And it is that little screw just underneath the character portraits. I think it's a screw. Honestly, I got no idea. I've never really thought about that, but it looks like a flathead screwdriver, you know what I mean? So how do we do it? Well, we activate it by pressing A, B, C, and D all at the same time. You see there's a little animation that plays, and you get this timer where that screw was. And this is how you enter overdrive, right? And you're gonna see this quite a lot. Is, like I said, a very central part of this game. So what does it do? I mean, honestly, it almost would be easier to say what overdrive doesn't do, because it really is, you know, that pivotal to the game. But functionally, you know, it is a limited time install for your character, which again you can see from this timer lasts 4 seconds, right? It does go up as you are lower health, so it's a pseudo comeback mechanic in that, hey, you know, if you're down on life and you manage to activate overdrive, you get it for twice the duration, which, you know, 8 seconds, not a long time, but it does pause during hit stop and stuff. So during combos, it does last a lot longer than you might think. But all right, I'm installed. What exactly does it do? And I think that's what makes this mechanic especially interesting and really fun to play around with is that what it does is entirely dependent on your character. For Jubei, for example, it usually affects all your drive moves. Drives being the moves on your D button, which are very unique. Obviously, characters have normals like they would in other fighting games, with A, B, C being like your light, medium, heavy. And then the drive moves are very special moves that they do very different functions depending on the character. So for Jubei, he gets this kind of long-winded dash and it marks the opponent. Not too much to talk about there. He can do it in the air and stuff like that. Generally, not the best move, won't lie. It has its uses and matchups. You know, it's mostly combo filler, right? At least for right now. You know, he does have an install where his drive goes a little crazy. But how does Overdrive affect Jubei's drive moves? Because that's usually what it does. It usually buffs your drive moves. It does a lot more as well. But for Jubei, I mean, I'll show you, right? We saw this. We see how fast it is. You know, it's pretty fast. If I had a frame meter, I could tell you specifically, but on top of my head, not sure how fast it is. In Overdrive, though, check how much faster this is, you know? And the speed at which it is in Overdrive, it definitely helps a lot. It isn't even that big of an improvement for Jubei, but, you know, in install, his Overdrive becomes significantly faster. Like, this is now very fast. Another thing that it does affect the Overdrive, it does always affect your supers. This is the super without the Overdrive, you know, 2.4K, cool, and it just does that little animation. This is the super with Overdrive, you know, 3.1, big damage, right? When Jubei is in install, he gets his new drive move, which is this four-way dash thing, but in a combo, you know, he can't do it again until he lands, right? So he has to land to be able to like combo out of this. That's cool, but he can still super here, does some damage, right? So suddenly, if you manage to do this in Overdrive, he doesn't have to land. He can just keep doing it. And you know what? This super does more damage the higher up you are. So you ladder them all the way to the top, boom, you break them down. And honestly, one of my favorite and coolest combos in this game is just that little ladder combo from Jubei. And again, it's all locked behind this Overdrive. And I've already really talked about it, how it works and why it's like interesting from okay, it buffs your character, it's an install. I'm a big fan of installs. That's a given for sure. But it has so many other uses as well, and I think that's why it's such a pivotal part of this game, is that the game does revolve around it. The install stuff is just a bit of gravy on top. I mentioned that it has a lot of other uses, and that is why Overdrive is so interesting. But what other uses does it have? Obviously, like I mentioned, you do it in neutral, right? And you go into Overdrive from neutral. You're not going to see very many people do this. You're not going to see many people do this at all. A quick note as well, it actually freezes the timer. So if you're getting timed out, that is probably one of the few times you'd actually do this from neutral. If you were to use it while the opponent is in hit stun, it becomes like a fast RC sort of thing. You know, you get to cancel, you get this cancel Overdrive. And if you notice the timer, it is cut down by half. So there's an opportunity cost of doing this. And obviously if you're like full HP, that's going down from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. So you're not really getting much benefit. So why would you want to do this? Well, a lot of characters get a lot of interesting confirms if they Overdrive cancel, and they might want to do that because their character specifically desires you to commit to a big combo to maybe, you know, for Susanoo, he gets to unlock certain special moves and things like that. The other reason you might want to do an Overdrive cancel is that if you notice the opponent's burst gauge, or the Overdrive gauge, apologies, is the screw. We'll talk about the other uses for this burst gauge later. But if you look at the screw while they're in hit stun, they actually can't burst any of this combo. So what happens at a very high level very often is that someone might block like a DP, or they just find that one hit, and then they just need to be able to kill, and this locks your opponent out of being able to burst. But you'll see this quite often. To be able to close out a round, they will cancel, move into Overdrive, you know, you can't burst this anymore, and then now you're gonna die. It's something that again adds a lot of depth to the game. You got to be very situationally aware of your opponent's burst gauge. It might just be regenerating, maybe they'll regenerate in time, but then you do the overdrive cancel, now they aren't able to burst. So one of the other ways you can activate it is defensively. I mentioned already slightly that you can use it to burst. So like there, he hits me with that overhead, right? And maybe I don't want to hold that, right? And I just burst. It's very expensive to burst in this game. It's very expensive to burst in this game. I can't lie. So it's not something you're going to see too often, but again, it's part of the player expression. It's part of where that comes in, and a part of the characters might value different things. For example, someone like Jubei, I've already told you what all his drive system things do, but in reality, it's not that powerful. So saving overdrive to be able to land an opportunity to get an overdrive cancel combo or something like that is not really that valuable to him, because he doesn't really gain much from overdrive compared to some other characters, which I'll definitely cover shortly. So he's a character that, hey, a lot of the time your overdrive is not that useful as an install. So players who play Jubei are just going to be more likely to burst because it's less of an opportunity cost to them. It's less of a worry and stuff like that. So why wouldn't you want to burst as soon as you get hit? Well, it's because of an excellent design mechanic called the overdrive card cancel. So if he does this overhead again, right, and I block it, and he RCs and continues to do a combo, and I have to block all that, and obviously it's a combo on hit, it's a bit of a mix up on block. What can I do about that? Well, this is probably the number one use case for overdrive, and the best, and one that has the most amount of depth, because you have to know what your overdrive guard canceling. But if I block this overhead and then I overdrive, hey, I'm invincible. You see that? You see that his normal didn't hit me. So if I block, and then his normal is going to hit me on block, right? But if I block this and then overdrive cancel, I'm invincible. Something I've probably neglected to mention is that, yeah, overdrive, it is fully invincible. Like the entire startup is fully invincible, has no punishable recovery. And that includes coming out of guard cancel. So I can overdrive through his overhead, actually. You see that? His overhead's coming in. It doesn't hit me, and I could punish him here. I can get a punish on him if I'm fast enough, you know. Obviously, I'm using a terrible example because no one's actually reacting to Jubei's overhead, by the way. It's 19 frames, I think. Very fast. Very little animation stop as well. Anyway, not here to talk about Jin's overhead. Don't know if I said Jubei there. But again, you can guard cancel the overdrive, and if someone's doing an extended pressure sequence and they're autopiling their offense, hey, I'm going to get a big punish on you, you know? That wasn't a big punish, but you get what I mean. And this is where it becomes a very, very interesting game, is that when your opponent has overdrive, they can do this at any point. So do you really want to commit to a high recovery move? And, you know, Jubei's got a lot of these. This is his stat, his 5C. Okay, 2 hits, right? So what I might do to open someone up, I might do, you know, dash up 5B, delay 5C, little frame trap, you know, keep it simple. If he reads I'm going for this frame trap, you get guard cancel on the 5B, my 5C would have 1,000 years of recovery, and he gets a full overdrive punish. And I think that's the other big thing. I talked about the installs, right? And how much it can affect your character. Obviously, in terms of Jubei, it doesn't affect him too much. Someone like Jin, if you give them this overdrive cancel combo, oh, missed your reaction check. But if you overdrive someone's overhead and then you get this big combo starter, look, I'm going to have full duration of my overdrive meter. You know, I haven't done the guard cancel here, although I could. I've gone straight through the overhead. I've got a full punish opportunity, and if you don't remember, they can't burst any of this. So if I play well defensively and react fast enough, I get a non-burstable punish on my opponent's attempted overhead, right? And for a lot of characters, this is where it becomes very threatening. So if you're playing Jin, you know, if you're playing Jin, you really want to be careful about, I mean, you don't want to be careful about him specifically because of overhead. You know what? Jubei's got an overhead, right? This one's a lot more manageable, quite slow overhead. I don't want, if someone has overdrive available to them, I don't want to open them up with this, because if they're a good player, they'll just react with overdrive, make it whiff, and then get a huge punish on me. So it changes the game entirely that this is an option, right? That you can invuln through someone's overhead, or you can even guard cancel through my 5C, as I mentioned before. So if my opponent has resources available to them, you know, my pressure might look something like this. You know, it's not going to be threatening them with big frame traps. I'm going to have to commit to some stagger. You know, luckily I do have a +1 block low with this the god kick, the 2B, or I might like try and get cheeky with a, you know, command dash, arrow dash, or whatever. But like in general, I'm gonna be very scared to commit to anything, and I think that is something that, you know, is really cool to play around, because obviously it's universal. You also have the option to play around your opponent's offense like that. It suddenly becomes an option when they don't have that available to them. If suddenly, you know, your opponent doesn't have overdrive because they bursted or they spent it early on a combo or something, now I can mix in this threatening overhead that leads into big damage, right? And then even if they do manage to block it, they have to guess on a, you know, unblockable or something like that, you know. It's one of those things that is just, it's very fun to play around, and it's something I got taught as well. Like, you learn very early on that, like, hey, some characters are going to be more vulnerable to this. You know, if I have a 2-hitting move off one button and the first part whiffs, hey, guess what? Like, they're going to punish me. Okay, so this is Terami, who is probably the most extreme example in Blazblue Central Fiction of a character designed around the burst gauge. All of his drives, he's basically designed around the all meter. He's one hungry boy, you know. Look at the meter generation on this kind of move, you know. It is crazy. Like this little confirm, I just got nearly like 50 meter, you know. That is a lot of meter, you know. So we saw that meter generation. Now check it out in Overdrive, you know. It's suddenly a lot more. Also, it steals the opponents. So his drive mechanic is that he gets to steal the opponent's meter. Doesn't happen regularly, but suddenly, you know, he goes into overdrive and look at that, your opponent's meter is going down. So yeah, I find a hit, whatever, I do this, not even a combo, but I get that 100 meter and check out the opponent's heat gauge. They literally finish this combo with basically no meter. He sucked it all out of them. And just look at the size of his normals, like how big they get when he does overdrive. So when he does overdrive, look, this is my 5D, this is my 2D, you know, reasonable size moves, pretty cool. But then look, it's so big. It's massive. He's, yeah, like I said, he's kind of, you need to overdrive the character, right? And there's a reason why he's not very good, and that is you get to overdrive once generally per round, right? There are not many ways to regen it. So how about I break down how exactly you get your burst gauge back or your overdrive gauge back. So say I did a raw overdrive in neutral. What happens to my burst gauge? What's going to happen here is I'll be left with 30%. You see it says 3, it ticks up over time and it goes up to 10, and then you get your overdrive back. So you get like a 30% refund if you use overdrive, right? If I had Jin do a combo on me, I could actually get hit here. If I choose to burst this, I actually get 0. So I miss out on that little refund. And this is another element that makes overdrive so appealing, is that, hey, do I decide to use burst and break my opponent's combo early, save myself some damage, or would I prefer to wait till they finish the combo, they got the Oki situation, and then I'll use overdrive, you know, to react to their overhead, you know? Is that what I'd rather do? Like, if he does this, do I just want to save my overdrive for that? And a lot of the time the answer is yes. And that is because of one crucial factor, and that is a state called active flow, which is the other way to regen your burst gauge. So what is active flow? Let me break it down. So what is active flow? active flow is basically like the momentum meter of this game. You can't see it. It's kind of invisible. Technically, you can see it. It is the screw of your overdrive will start spinning faster the closer you are, but you know, you're not going to be able to really tell. So how do you build it up? What is it and what does it do? You build it up by hitting your opponent, defending well, opening up your opponent, doing anything basically will build up this active flow. Super important. At the high level, this is the gameplay is going to kind of revolve around landing this. So you can see now actually the screw is spinning very, very fast. And that means I think I'm ready to enter active flow. So how would I enter active flow? It's not by doing any defensive actions. You have to land an offensive action. So if I land in this overhead, boom, active flow. Right, what does it do? It gives me 10% damage already, just off the rip. 10% damage, very good. The big thing that it does though is that it regenerates my drive gauge. Okay, so let's say I were to use my overdrive and it would be gone and I got that 30%, right? So I could enter active flow here and it will increase my regeneration of my burst gauge incredibly fast. You see how fast it's building up right now? I think it basically like quadruples the passive regen rate. So especially when you're at low health, it regens very, very fast. And you can see I've almost already got my burst back just from that. So being able to get into this active flow is really, really important. Really, really important. Yeah, once you burst, you just don't have access to active flow anymore. And if you were in active flow, it stops immediately. So you can't like be in active flow, burst, get a lot of your burst gauge back. So while bursting is obviously a very powerful tool in basically any game it's in, there's a huge opportunity cost to it. But hey, sometimes you're going to be forced to do it, right? You don't want to give someone the free game-winning combo. And in some matchups, it's worth it. You know, you don't care that much about active flow. Maybe if you're a zoner and you're getting up against a rushdown, they get that one chance to get in. They do land it. You got your burst, you got your, you know, get out of jail free cards. Even though it keeps you away from that active flow state and powerful overdrive mechanics, you get a second chance, and that is worth way more. But again, it comes down to the player and what they feel comfortable doing. Some players are gonna hold on to it just to do the overdrive guard cancel, and they're able to blow up your offense that way, right? Or rather, maybe they'd rather just burst the combo originally. And again, that's just part of why I love this game and why the overdrive mechanic is so important, so amazing, and so well designed, is that it's built around the entire system, but it's not over centralizing. It's designed to be used as much as possible, and like, you know, it's designed to be powerful, but it doesn't overshadow the power of the characters themselves. So like even someone like Terumi, who is entirely built around that mechanic, you know, he can still function without it, and he has to. And again, that comes into what this character and what this game is all about sometimes. Is obviously Terumi really wants to find that opening where he can overdrive cancel, do a combo, or he can overdrive your offense and then get a big punish on you, steal all your meter. You know, he wants that. That's how he wins games. But the thing is, that opportunity is not going to come up every game. So you're going to have to find a different way of winning sometimes. Even for a character like him, he will have to burst sometimes. A character like Jubei doesn't really like doing the overdrive cancel combos, but might have to at some point to avoid a burst. You know, other characters want to save it for one specific reason, but a situation might come up where that isn't the case. It's not worth saving it if it can save you from a worse situation, you know. And again, some players might opt not to do that. You know, they will hold on to it, they will greed on this resource, and they will try and land it optimally, and they will try and get that active flow to get it back. And you'll see that a lot. And again, that just comes down to player expression. Some players will just burst. They don't care about the overdrive mechanic that much. Maybe their character doesn't function around it that much. It just adds so much depth to this game, and one of the reasons I just think it's one of the best design mechanics. I genuinely don't know if there's anything I would change about that mechanic. Thanks for getting to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you didn't like it, then just tell me why. I'll take that on as constructive feedback anyway.
Sorry if it ended a bit abruptly. This is my first time doing something like this, so I didn't really have a solid plan going in. I really enjoyed making this video, but I've definitely got a lot to learn. So expect the quality of these videos to go up tenfold next time I get one out. I definitely challenged myself by picking Blazblue first here. But in short, Blazblue's overdrive mechanic is well designed just because it comes from a resource that has a multitude of uses, and to use it effectively, it's never very clear how to be able to do that, which makes every game very refreshing because you'll find new and creative ways to be able to use overdrive to win a game. It's also very well designed around the characters. Each character has a unique overdrive, as I mentioned. And the big thing is that the characters are all balanced differently around it. Some people care about overdrive, some people don't. And I think that's fine, and I think that's beautiful. And I'd love to see more of that in fighting games in general.